maneuver.
Stay on target.
We're too close.
Stay on target.
Greetings, groovy people! Welcome to Blue Dragon Art, where I discuss indie art projects, comics, and just about anything relating to art. Typically, I discuss my free, not safe for work webcomic, Dark Horse. These are hard copy versions of the webcomic that is for free on my website down in the description. Today, I'm going to do a quick survey of how I personally kept organized and stayed on target to complete my 7-page Dark Horse one-shot, How I Spent My Vacation, and an in-universe ad that's kind of spoofing the film Clueless, which was really popular in the 90s, and also a little bit about staying on target for the merch designs that are for benchmark incentives for our Kickstarter. So please, check out the Aradia Beat TGIF, the 90s Kickstarter. The link's down in the description. I'll have it floating in the text above here too. But this is all about just how I stayed on target. If you are interested in 90s nostalgia, or you would like some tips that will help you complete your own projects, or just enjoy learning how others work, then this video is going to be for you. I'm going to break this video down into chapters and topics. First, I'm going to discuss why I think group projects are so incredibly important, at least to me personally. Second, I'm going to suggest a couple ways for you to find projects online that you can, be a part of. Just a couple suggestions, nothing like, too in-depth. 3, I'm going to talk about important etiquette, which I personally try my best to abide by when I'm working on a community project. 4, I'm going to discuss a bit in depth, but not too in-depth. We're gonna go into the shallow depths. Oxymoron. But how I personally worked and stayed on target to complete this project by the deadline. 5, I'm gonna discuss communication. I'm just gonna have that be its entirely own section because just from personal experience, I feel that this is something that oftentimes people can work on. 6, I'm going to discuss just a little bit of extra information, just some kind of miscellaneous stuff that I didn't really feel had a place in the rest of the video. Finally, 7, I'm gonna have my closing thoughts and then we'll end the video up. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. I personally think that group projects are very important for artists in general. I did an entire video on how important I think networking is. So if you're interested in that, you can find that in the iCard if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on BitChute, I will put it down in the description. At any rate, I personally think that group projects are very important. Some of it has to do with networking. Some of it has to do with engendering positive interactions with one another online, just because there are so incredibly many bad interactions that people can have online. And while yes, sometimes group and community projects will kind of be entangled with some bad experiences, personally, from my personal experience, overall, by the end of it, there's something that I could always take away. Even if some things weren't, maybe there were hiccups, or maybe I didn't get along with everyone in the group. It turned out we had like very varying ideals and ideas of how things should be done or executed. At the same time, I think it's very important for us to be willing to interact with each other online, work in a group, and maybe you've made a friend by the end of it, but if you haven't really connected, then you move your separate ways, and maybe you'll find that you've actually learned a little bit from the experience, and that will help you with future experiences. Just overall, I do think that community and group projects are very good for like building your own repertoire of interacting with other people. You're gonna have disputes, you're gonna have people telling you what to do, you're gonna be telling people what to do at times. And I think it's good for us to have those interactions as human beings, especially out in cyberspace, because you have to deal with that in your personal life a lot, but I feel like people can just be kind of, my way or the highway when it comes to like interacting on the internet. I oftentimes see that people don't really listen to one another or work with one another, and I think that as more and more of our lives are taken up by, internet time, it's important for us to learn how to acclimate and work with one another and not just be, on our high horse, regardless of what your personal opinions are. For group projects, obviously, your own projects, do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? I think it's also very important to like form those bonds of camaraderie and to build your reputation as someone who's reliable and helpful and willing to kind of step up and help a project succeed. I think that's very good for your reputation, but it's also very good for you and your self-esteem. I also think that it's important to do group projects, just because they're fun. I personally find them to be fun. Yes, of course, I stress at times, but by the end of the day, by the end of the project, usually the bad parts are just kind of like the subtext to like the overall good experience that I had. I also think it's important for promotion and in some cases pay, depending on what the project is. Sometimes there's a free project. I've done free projects before, and I've also done projects that are for pay. And by the end of those projects, you end up with like hard copy reminders of, being a part of a group of collected works. And to me, I like having this. This was kind of like a commissioned piece, but also this person was my friend. This was kind of a group project, but also kind of a commission. But anyway, it's still, I think, a group project since we worked on it together. So those are kind of some of my thoughts regarding, building community and why group projects are important, at least in my perspective. So let's move along to like the next topic that I wanted to discuss. If you're interested in community projects, sometimes it might be a little hard for you to find them. I'm not gonna get super in depth as I mentioned earlier, but some of the ways that I've come across communal projects are through collectives. The specific one was through the Aradia Magical Girl Collective. I worked on another zine with them previously that was a free zine. That was the Glitter and Gold Fashion zine, which you can read for free. It's down in the description, but I'll also put a link in the hovering text in this video. I also have found community projects on forums. Comic Fury has them, Tapas has them, Reddit has had them. Other means of social media will also announce projects or zines or things of that nature. Some of them are paid, some of them aren't. There's also forums over on DeviantArt, but they're very divisive right now just because of all the bullshit they've been pulling with this dream up garbage AI crap shit producer. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. But anyway, let's not get into that. That's a whole other controversy. If you want to know what I'm talking about, you could probably check out Mohammed, I think it's Mohammed Abagdi. I think he did a video on it, as did Duchess Celestia. There's a lot of art YouTubers who've talked about it, so there's no need for me to get into it. But if you're interested, I guess I can throw those links down in the description. At any rate, it is garbage, so you may not want to go over to DeviantArt, but you might still be able to find people who are commissioning or working on group projects together. So, it might be safe to still interact with the forums. Always be careful who you're interacting with, though, because you never know who's on the other end of the computer. Make sure if money is going to be involved or something like that, make sure you don't sign anything that's going to sign your rights away, especially if you don't know the person from Adam. I just kind of a little caution right there. You also can begin a project all on your own. Back in 2020, when the pandemic began, a lot of us were kind of feeling down, and even at the end of 2019, I had been kind of kicking around the idea of having a community zine over on Comic Fury. So in 2020, a group of us, I called, I put up a forum thread calling for people who are interested in helping to build this project. And a couple of us worked together. One dude is still on the team now. Other people have gone their way, but I'm still in communication with them. And we were able to spearhead a project. But if something that you want to work on doesn't exist, see if you can find some like-minded people who are rearing and ready to go and work on a project with you. Because if you can't find something, you can be the leader, and it will give you experience in becoming a leader. I didn't have that experience then, but I feel a little bit more comfortable now. And yeah, I really feel like I have really improved my communication and my ability to kind of work with a group because of that project. So that's just a couple thoughts on participating and where to find community projects. This section I'm going to talk about important things that you should probably keep in the back of your mind or in the forefront of your mind before you start getting involved in a project. I think it's very important that we be respectful of others and their time. And regardless of, whether you really like someone, at least not trying to embroil yourself in any kind of drama. If you've already signed a contract and you're working on a project and you have to stick it out with this specific person, I would do my best to just be respectful of the situation and once everything's complete, everything's done, everyone's good to go, then just don't interact with that person anymore. Likewise, the flip side of that is to be respectful of yourself and don't allow yourself to get walked on. It's not creating drama to point out that, hey, maybe you could be a little less terse, or please don't talk to me that way because it comes off as rude, or a polite way of saying something like that. So it kind of goes both ways. Make sure that you're respecting others, but also make sure that in some ways you demand respect for yourself when you're working on a project. Another thing that I like to keep in mind is to be helpful. If you have the time, or if you have the ability, or you're able to kind of schedule it in, even if you're already busy. If you can be helpful to others, there's a variety of different ways you can do that, either by showing moral support, or you could, offer to do this or to do that layout, or I can edit this or whatever. Just small ways of being helpful. Sometimes you'll offer your help and people will end up that they don't need it, but it always feels good and engenders an air of positivity when you at least offer your assistance to people. In my opinion, I think that really helps keep the morale up, because then, maybe somebody else in the group who's feeling super stressed, you have at least given them the opportunity to relieve some of that weight off their shoulders. And it's their right to take it or not. If they decide not to, that's them. That's fine. Maybe they don't want help with it. They just want to complain. I know lots of people who just want to complain. I do that too. Sometimes I just want to bitch and I don't want any solution. But sometimes people are looking for help and they're waiting for someone to offer. So it's always good to just kind of throw that out there. Be attentive, pay attention to announcements, try to keep in communication, which I will talk about later. I think it's good to also make sure that you don't overstress. Stress is going to happen, especially as deadlines, start kind of rolling in, but do your best to reserve time for yourself and to try to not stress out. Know your limits if you can, or at least start to learn what your limits are and maybe write it down. Maybe you'll learn something about yourself in the project or in the process, and you'll be able to figure out, hey, this is my limit. I will keep this in mind for the next time I do something, if I choose to do something. And of course, dudes, what's the point of being a part of a voluntary project, specifically one that's not getting paid? But even if you are getting paid, what is the point if you aren't having fun? Find a way to make it fun. Make sure that you're doing something that you enjoy and that you love. It's not always going to be the case, especially if this is like a job for you, but the way I view it is there is something to be enjoyed in just about everything. Just about. Obviously, there's a caveat. Obviously, there's some things that are not fun at all. But if it's a project that you're volunteering for, ideally, it's something that you're interested in. So maybe the research part of the project is what's fun to you, or maybe it's the drawing process or the coloring or what have you. Make sure that you're having a good time and you try to hold on to those memories and enjoy that aspect of the project. Okay, so now we're going to get down into the nitty-gritty of how I personally stayed on target for this project. I'm going to try to not be too incredibly long-winded with this. First and foremost, read everything, all of the literature, very carefully and concisely. Read email communications. If there's a Discord server, which was the case with Aradia, make sure you're keeping up with the Discord server. It's very important that you have an idea of what is expected of you before you really get deeply involved. This booklet was emailed out to us before we signed the contract. So if there's anything that you don't agree with, half the questions that you might have are going to be within the guidelines. It's also important just to keep this in mind so that you are abiding by what the guidelines are, or so that you're aware if there's something that you don't agree with, that you're not down with, then you know to skip on that specific project before you get too heavily involved. So if you're not reading the literature, you got no one else to blame but yourself if there's something that you misconstrued or was not aware of. Having said that, on the flip side, it's also very important to be aware of the literature in case there is a mistake made by whoever's coordinating it, and you'll be able to like support your claim because you very carefully paid attention to, you know, what the guidelines were, what was expected of you. So it's kind of like, it goes both ways. It both protects the coordinator of the project and yourself and everybody else involved. So I think it's very important to make sure that you're keeping up to date with what people are expecting of you and what is actually in your contract and how they want things sent in and what the format is and what have you. The other thing that they sent out, which is why it's very important to, you know, keep up with the literature, is what their schedule was. And we do this also with the Comic Fury zine. We have it on the website. We have it in the previous zine. When it comes down to like the checkpoints for everyone, we email that out. And I have started also just kind of including that schedule in the forum thread so that people know ahead of time what time scale they're working in. So it's very important to kind of keep and follow to their schedule, if whatever project you're a part of. I personally printed this off and kept it where I could see it, and you can see I checked off as I kind of went along so that I was able to keep organized and make sure that I was hitting my deadlines. So even within somebody else's schedule, because I know that my life is busy, everyone's life is busy, I knew what their large chunk deadlines were, but within that, I kind of niched it down to specific goals that I had within the periods between deadlines. This is something that I do for myself to keep organized. I will set tasks that I need to complete. Usually I'll do it like on a weekly basis. But that's so that I can work around my own personal projects like these videos, like Dark Horse, like my Patreon and Subscribe Star rewards, like Comic Fury zine, which we were taking applications before this project ended. So I was kind of juggling several projects at once. And if I didn't keep on task and have at least weekly goals for what I wanted to have completed in between their deadlines, then I would not have been able to finish this on time at all. I was late for one deadline, and that was because I was, you know, returning from a family emergency that had been going on at the time. So as I was just getting at, it's very important for you to keep personal goals and deadlines in sight, either on your computer calendar, or if you're like me, you needed a printed hard copy, I slapped it on the wall, just boom, taped it on the wall so that I could refer to it and keep an eye on it while I was working on things. So while I was working around like my other projects, because I enjoy the process of creating artwork, I would oftentimes work like, you know, at the airport. I was able to keep my mind off the screaming kids at the airport. Oh my God, they had the whole airport and the kids, they were climbing all over, like touching my lap. But like to keep myself from going postal, I worked on my thumbnails and stuff. I knew I was going to miss the deadline, but I utilized that time that I was just waiting around, and it was like hours at the airport, y'all. Instead of being mad about the flight, you know, the situation that I was in, or upset, I found something fun to work on in my downtime. But because I had to work around other projects, I find it very fruitful and fun, because this is something that I like to do, to work on things in various spaces when you have downtime. I also worked on sketching out ideas for like my in-universe poster. I sketched the original ideas in a tiny little sketchbook that I had in my backpack. I did that at a place that we were dining out at. I did other sketching when we were at the tavern. I take my sketchbook with me everywhere. I did a lot of brainstorming in these downtimes when I'm just kind of relaxing and doodling and just you know, you're just there to chill, that's kind of something that I personally find relaxing. Maybe that's not the case for you, but for me, because I do like the creative process, that's something that I did to utilize time that, you know, would otherwise maybe not have been as fruitful as it could have been. And so that at least for me helped hit deadlines. But this is like just what works for me. If that's something that like doesn't work for you, I'm not telling you like fill every single ounce of your spare time with work. If that's what you're viewing it as work, then don't do that. My next suggestion is to take breaks. Now, don't completely put off your work and procrastinate, but I found it very important to take breaks. I still ended up, you know, running things down to the wire the day of, the week of, but at the same time, I was interspersing a lot of this with breaks, either playing video games or reading, or as I said, we'd go out to the tavern or we'd go out to eat. Again, just because this was such a big project. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, of course I did have like a lot of work like left, right, when we were getting down to the wire, but taking breaks was very important, and also making sure that I was taking action and not like wasting my work time when I was at home. I do have to like manage myself since I work from home. So, you know, take breaks, but also make sure that you're not like skipping out on important flow states whenever you're like really getting into something. Oh my God, and I cannot stress this enough. Keep organized. Keep organized. Keep organized. How did I keep organized? One, I did lists and notes. That's very important to me. Not only do I have the schedule, but I have a booklet where I write down what I need to get done in a month. And then I have pieces of paper where I write down what I need to get done in like a week. And so I personally am a note and list taker, and there's nothing more satisfying to me than putting a check mark and then crossing it out. Oh my God, I love doing that. So that was one way that I kept organized. What I also mean is keep your stuff organized. I had folders and nesting folders, and everything was very clearly labeled for myself and for the collective. They had a place that you uploaded it, and I tried to make sure that I labeled everything very clearly. I made sure that I had very clear notes. I fixed my thumbnails up. I'll talk about this in Friday's video if anyone watches that. But, you know, I had eight images, 7 of which were pages, including a cover, and one that was like an in-universe poster art. I organized my thoughts and shortened up what I had, and then I typed out, so that was clear and concise what I wanted to do and say. I typed out what their dialogue was going to be, uploaded it so that they would see it for one of our deadlines, and then I used this and took notes. You can see that I took notes. Sometimes I changed dialogue. I wrote down, like, because I was working in CYMK, I wrote down notes. If this was like a cyan or magenta or whatever, I knew what this was at the time, but like I took notes and I kept my stuff very, very organized, both physically, because I work traditionally, and digitally, kept it organized. I mean, that doesn't mean that things didn't fall in disarray from time to time, but I picked it up and cleaned it up every so often to make sure that everything was organized. This here, all my sketches, I keep these all together and relatively in page order. I did a lot of panels separately, which I've talked about in other videos, so I'm not going to go into that now. Kept my inked pages together. Obviously, I changed Ren's design from that, but all the stuff that I inked, I keep together. This I just keep in a folder in my my drawers. I also printed off some stuff so that I could write more notes, but you can see when things were done, I wrote it off. I ticked it off. I also took notes on these pages because, you know, I wanted to kind of have some ideas and stuff. Sometimes it's easier for me, because I am a traditional artist, to kind of scribble ideas into the panels rather than trying to figure out what I want to do once I've got everything into the computer. Another way I kept organized was keeping track of my colors, but I personally, you don't have to do this, but wrapping my mind around the CYMK and what it was actually going to look like when it printed, I am so totally glad that I sent these off to be printed cheaply at like Office Max, Office Depot, whatever it is, because this is what it was originally going to be. Very desaturated, kind of pastel, but almost like dirty looking to me, versus what I ended up doing, which is way more neon. The color is far more saturated, very bright, very much so capturing the feel of what I actually wanted to portray in this zine. Because when you're working on digitally, it's RGB versus CYMK with the printer. So the colors are going to look different on the computer than when it actually gets printed. So for me personally, not something everyone has to do, but this is what I did to keep organized and keep track of how things were looking. I have an entire folder of every page, but because of the contract, I am not going to be showing you these, but you get the idea. I mean, you understand what I did. So a moment ago, I mentioned that communication was very important. To me, personally, communication is key. And I say this because I have personal experience working with people, working in groups, personal experience working on a project that has a deadline, and people, things happen in their lives and they just drop off the face of the earth. I don't know without communication what's happened. With one project, someone had something happen to them personally with their computer due to where in the world they were living, and we had to temporarily remove their work because we hadn't gotten their permission to print it. And I didn't want to risk getting sued, you know what I'm saying? Now that was like the first time we'd ever really done this specific project, and it was definitely not that person's fault. Obviously they were having computer problems, but whereas they had told somebody else on the forums what was going on, they hadn't really told us or communicated with us, and I sent several messages and emails, and it was very shortly thereafter that they finally were back up and running and were able to reach out and give us permission. But I say that because it's very important to have communication with people. Cannot stress it enough. One time I was going to be late because of the airport. I was mentioning this earlier. And so it was important for me to reach out and contact the coordinator and let her know, hey, I am still a part of this project, but this is what's going on in my personal life. This has been out of my control. I have a relatively good reputation and fully intend to complete this project, but I wanted to make you aware of what was going on, and if something happens where I am unable to do this project, then I will certainly notify you before you start putting things together. But having said that, I was actually able to just be like a couple days late for that first check-in, and then I was on time for every other one after that. So I held up my end of the bargain. But I mean, life will sometimes throw shit at you, and that's not always the case, which is why I think it's very important to stress communication. That person on the other end of the computer has no idea what you're going through in your own personal life. You don't necessarily need to overshare things, but I think it's very important that you don't just ghost someone. The longer you ghost someone, the more pissed off they're gonna be. You may end up getting yourself kicked out of the project. If you ghost someone, if you don't communicate what's going on, this is a day and age when you don't know if somebody on the other end has passed away or not. I don't know how old everyone that I work. I mean, I have an idea of how old some of these people are just because we share similar interests, but I don't know them, and they don't know me, and they don't know what my life or my health or my status or my living situation is. And so if I don't keep in communication and something is up, they could also be worrying like something has happened to you. And to me, I feel like that's very disrespectful to unintentionally cause duress and stress when you just don't, you're maybe nervous or anxious and you don't want to tell someone you're going to be late. The repercussions are going to be far worse if you just keep procrastinating and not tell someone about what's going on versus if you are up to date with them and keep them informed on what's going on. right from the get-go. And again, you can choose how much information you want to share, but just communicating that, hey, life is happening. I don't want to get into the details, but this is kind of what's going on. This is an idea of what's going on, and I may or may not be late, or blah, 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 this, that, or the other. You get what I'm saying? Also, regarding communication, it's very good for you to ask questions. Ask questions if you're not clear about something. The question you have may be a question that somebody else has, and people have different levels of anxiety, so if you're not asking and they're not asking and nobody's asking, there could be a question that several people have and nobody's getting an answer to because nobody stepped up to the plate and asked the question. On the other side of that, I also look for other people's questions for that exact reason, because it may be a question I have, and I don't want to be asking the same question 20 fucking times when that question has already been answered and everybody in the project is fairly busy. Now, I know that Discord can be a little overwhelming. That's where most of our questions were answered. So I did have to skim through. I'm not particularly fond of doing that kind of thing just because it all starts to blur and look the same to me. I don't know, that's my brain. My brain broken. But at the same time, I made myself do it because, hey, I want to respect people's time. It all comes back to respecting one another. I don't want to disrespect someone by not paying attention and asking something that's already been addressed in a 20 sentence answer. You know what I'm saying? I also, regarding communication, as we were getting to the deadline, there were some people who were asking for extensions. There were other people who were very quiet. And then there were several people like me who were very excited to announce, not to rub it in the people who needed an extension's face, but just excited to announce, relieved to announce that, oh my God, everything's done, it's in there. That left it so that, although I know the coordinator was checking in on the folder, a lot of people have Discord on their phone, so maybe they were able to access Discord quicker and see that, hey, this person's taken care of. So that was a form of communication that, a lot of us in the group did. And the people who needed extensions, they asked politely about it, and they, updated the status. I've gotten this done. Hey, here's this page. And we got to see each other's work and, the stages, and just, it was really good to keep in communication and just kind of see what other people were doing. And then the last thing is just to always keep an eye on your emails in the Discord or whatever way people are communicating, just to, again, to keep in the know and keep yourself abreast of whatever new developments have come up. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. It's just good information's important. You know what I'm saying? And finally, I want to talk about just some extra stuff regarding this specific project, which is something that could maybe be applied by whatever you're doing, or maybe you can find a way of, taking inspiration and doing something your own way, finding your own path, or maybe it can be instructional on what not to do. I don't know. What works for me may not necessarily work for you. Some extra things that I did was I tried to share positive reinforcement, particularly in the Discord server. If anyone uploaded an image, I would take a look at it. I put a little heart. And on occasion, I commented hey, this looks really cool. I mean, especially the ones that stood out to me that I really liked. I liked everyone's, but occasionally I wanted to say something, or maybe somebody felt a little unsure, and so I just wanted to give them a pat on the back and say, hey, you're doing good. I really didn't talk too terribly much. There were only a few occasions where I actually talked about other people's pieces, but when I did so, if they weren't asking a question, it was just to show, again, positive reinforcement, because it feels good, if you've done a job well done and other people, tell you, hey, this is cool, this is looking good. And you feel more like you're a part of the group because you're sharing your work and seeing their work, and you're just sharing in the success of the piece and, seeing how things are coming along. Some extra things that I wasn't really expecting to do, but I stepped up along with a couple other people, was that there was merch that needed to be designed for different benchmarks for the Kickstarter that's going on. And so I figured, I'm a part of this collective. I want this to succeed as much as anybody else. There are members who are from outside of the collective. They want this project to succeed just like everybody else. So, and because I could see, through communicating, through reading people's comments, that a lot of people were quite, overwhelmed or busy because they had full-time jobs and, full-time things going on in their life. Because I had gotten my stuff completed on time, I went ahead and stepped up, knew that I would be available to design some of the merchandise. And so that's just kind of a little extra thing that I did that I was so proud to be a part of. So some of my designs, I've got a bookmark and I've got a wallpaper, several different sizes. I did all the recommended sizes, the required ones and the extras for like different cell phones and desktop screens. Did them all, designed that. Very proud of myself for that. I like being helpful. I liked the challenge of designing something and stepping outside of my comfort zone, although I do like wallpapers and stuff for like Patreon and Subscribestar. I had a lot of fun researching, getting like some 90s nostalgia feels like shoujo and stuff like that. Really had a good time just looking at old stuff that I used to enjoy when I was younger. So volunteering for that part of the project really made me feel good because I got that design experience, I had some good feels, and I got to feel like a team player and help people out. Definitely check out that merch. I've got a bookmark, as I said, and some wallpapers. As I mentioned a little earlier, I offered to help people even if I didn't think that my help was needed, or even if I figured they probably weren't going to take me up on it. I still offered a helping hand in case anyone, needed something. That's just, a good habit to get into if you have a little bit more time than other people. And even if you don't, you never know what you can help with. Maybe it's something as small as editing. Maybe it's something as small as, hey, does this look right, or whatever, or hey, can you set this up, or can you send this out, or something like that. You never know what you can help with, and if it's just a small thing that you're doing but somebody else offers help and is willing to do something, then like slowly, the weight of all these tasks are reduced because several hands are holding up the project, holding it up. Sorry. Before I get into my final thoughts, promote. Just an extra. Promote. That's what I'm doing with these videos, y'all. I do it on social media, like Twitter, which is fun. God, everything is falling apart. DeviantArt, Twitter, everything. But I'm going there and I'm advertising and I'm going to other places. But promoting. It's not just enough that you've done a project. People aren't just, look, I made a thing. They're not going to just magically be attracted to something like a magnet because it's completed. You have to all collectively put forth an effort to promote what you have done. So yeah, that's why I'm doing all these videos. That's why I've been going to a lot of places kind of talking about this, sharing the Kickstarter, because it's extremely important that the more people advertise it, the more people are reached, and then the possibility of those people sharing it, and it just kind of branches out, roots out from there. So yeah, promotion is key. Just because you've done a project and completed it, that was the hard part. Now is the fun part where you get to brag about how cool this project was and how great it is and how people want to get in on it and get a copy of it. This is the fun part. This is where you get to like talk about how great your shit is. As I call it shit, but you know what I mean. It's like good shit, not like, yeah. Okay, my closing thoughts. I don't think that it's not obvious that I really enjoyed this project and that I found so much value in this, but I also want to stress that like this is a promotional video, right? And because I've been on this team, and as I stressed several times in the video, I've been fairly attuned to like a lot of the communications and seeing people's art, seeing people's submissions. I was nosy and went through and looked at everybody's submission because I didn't have access to edit, but I had access to look at things. And I can't like even begin to express how pumped up I was getting just looking at people's art pieces. There's like some funny advertisements. There's like word searches. There's a mascot quiz. There's tons of comics, like of a variety of different magical girls and magical transformation people. I mean, not just girls, but boys and NBs. It's just such a really cool project, and like I am stoked to see the completed book, because I've also been kind of getting a little bit of snippets of the cover art and a little bit of the design work that the lead designer has been working on, and It looks so freaking professional. It is. I'm gonna say it. The artwork and the layout is looking so incredibly good. And just the effort and work that everybody put into this. The comics, there's some that are so funny. There's like magical idol transformation girls who are like putting spells on people. There's people taking, you know, listen to like music and stuff, or like looking at fashion magazines. There's stuff about people being saved in the mall from like spooky monsters and shit. You know, typical magical girl fare from like the 90s. And just reading everyone, some of them are really funny, some of them are just really gorgeous. There's just so, and then there's like the funny adverts. Like some people have done like perfume adverts and, you know, fashion stuff. It's just so cool. It's a really cool zine, and it's going to be printed. It's going to be hard copy, so it's really going to feel nostalgic because it's going to be a book you can hold, you know, which we didn't have. You know, we didn't have like the PDF. I mean, there were probably PDFs in the 90s, but like not everybody was like sharing them and reading them. You know what I'm saying?
これがワールドワイドウェブを見るブラウザ。
So yeah, I'm just so stoked, y'all. Please go to the Kickstarter. Just check out the Kickstarter page. Watch the video. Just look at like the variety of artists who have participated. There's like, I know there's like over 30 artists, and this is just a really cool project. I had fun reading it. I'm almost certain that if you like anything Magical Girl, if you like 90s nostalgia, this zine is going to deliver. So definitely check it out. There's also writing. There's a short story about a magical girl, and it's really well written. There's just such a variety of stuff in this magazine, and it's so cool. So please do yourself a favor if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Check out the Kickstarter. Link is here in the floating text and down in the description. I really tried hard to like stay on target in this video. So anyway, until next time, peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.